Alright, today what we want to be able to do is, one, determine if a function is 1 to 1. And we'd like to be able to find inverse functions. Alright, nothing like a good time here. So, let's see. One-to-one functions. The easiest way to start is with a mapping. And let's say we had dog, and we had cat, and we had goat. And this was our domain. And in our range, we had cow, chicken, and goat chunks. Okay. So if we set this up and we drew an arrow from the domain to the range, each input has exactly one output. When that occurs, it is 1 to 1. Now, what some of you are saying is, yeah, that's a function, and how is a function not 1 to 1 then? Well, let's take a look again. All right, take a look at a mapping. Let's say that this time we had Brad, and who else could we have? We could have Will, and we could have Quinn. And we could have, that could be our domain, and our range might be, I don't know, their favorite musical artist, Miley Cyrus. Right. So now if we drew an arrow to each of that, now every input has exactly one output, but it's not one unique output. This is not 1 to 1. Okay? So that's the difference. We can't have two outputs where the same input is going to the same output. Two different inputs going to the same output. That is not a 1 to 1 function. Now we could look at an ordered pair as well. Something like 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 3. Okay, this is not 1 to 1, right? Because the 3 is repeated. But something like 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, where every input has its own unique output, that is 1 to 1. Okay. Now, define the inverses of these things. If we take a look at one of those simple mappings, okay, here's our domain, and let's put, I don't know, let's put Carly, and let's put Miller, and let's put Jared. And for the range, for the output, let's have chocolate, let's have tofu, and let's have meat. Okay. Now our mapping, Carly would like to eat some chocolate, Miller is all about tofu, and Jared is good with anything as long as it's meat. This would be our function. Now for the inverse, the range of the function becomes the domain of the inverse, and the domain of the original function becomes the range of the inverse. So what happens is the arrows go back the other way. Right? So that would be the inverse of the function. Now if we looked at this with our set of ordered pairs, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, that's our function. Our inverse would be 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4. Okay. Good. All right. So all we did is we switched the domain and the range values. In the next video, we'll talk about the graphs of these things, and we'll see kind of how they're related. Let's see. Alright, so now let's take a look at a function that is defined algebraically. And let's take a look at something real easy, real simple. Something like f of x is equal to 4x. And what we want to find is the inverse function of f of x. And this little exponent up here, that means inverse. When we raise something to the -1, it means inverse. Now, the easiest thing to do is, instead of writing this f of x equals 4x, is go ahead and write this y equals 4x. Now, to find the inverse, switch variables. Right, so what we're going to have is x equals 4y. Now solve for y. So x over 4 equals y, and that's equal to the inverse function of x. Let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at something just a little more fun. Something like f of x equals x cubed plus 1. Now, y equals x cubed plus 1, switch variables, x equals y cubed plus 1. So y cubed equals x minus 1, and then y is equal to the cubed root of x minus 1. So the inverse of f of x is equal to the cubed root of x minus 1. Okay? I think we got time for another one here. And let's see. Let's do one that's really exciting. Let's take a look at f of x equals 3 over x plus 5. Okay, first thing I do is I write that y equals 3 over x plus 5. And then I'm going to switch variables. I'm going to have x is equal to 3 over y plus 5. Now, I'm going to get rid of this denominator, and I'm going to do that by multiplying each side by y plus 5. So then I get x times y plus 5 equals 3. Do some distribution here, and we get xy plus 5x equals 3. So xy is equal to 3 minus 5x. Well, that just means that y is equal to 3 minus 5x over x, and that equals the inverse of f of x. All right. And that ends our video for tonight, and we'll talk about these things on Monday. Have a good weekend.